Here we go.
Okay.
And then we'll introduce you. Yeah?
If built in the Santa Rita Mountains, the proposed Rosemont open pit copper mine will deplete and pollute the water flowing through Cienega Creek and Davidson Canyon, two important desert waters that are protected from any degradation by Arizona law. These outstanding waters of Arizona, as they are known, are critical surface and groundwater resources for the Tucson Basin, and a refuge for animals found in few other places in the world. El Jefe, who lives here, is one of only 2 known wild jaguars in the United States. Will we allow a Canadian-based mining company to pump billions of gallons of our precious groundwater to process copper and enrich investors? Please call your senators, John McCain and Jeff Flake, and Representative Martha McSally, and tell them to protect our water.
Okay. Well, I think that video is a good introduction to our first speaker. We don't have those senators, but we still have Gayle Hartmann. Gayle has worked as a scientific editor, an archaeologist, a historian, and a conservationist for the past 40 years. She is the president of Save the Scenic Santa Ritas, and she's been involved in the battle to protect the Santa Rita Mountains from open pit copper mining for many years. So Gayle, we're really interested to hear what you have to tell us about Santa Rita, Rosemont, and what's new on the horizon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Connie.
Sorry.
Am I heard? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you both for putting this together. This is an interesting format. One of you said a while ago that Zoom, has a lot of positive to it. It's more people, but I'll tell you from my limited technological standpoint, it can be kind of difficult. I'm not really up to some of this, so please bear with me. But yes, my name is Gayle Hartmann. I am president of the nonprofit organization called the Scenic Santa Ritas. And I live in Tucson. We are based all over Southern Arizona. Our board, we have an excellent board, and they on both sides of the Santa Ritas and in Tucson and in the Vail area. Currently, our representative who lives in Green Valley is John Cosma, and Dr. Tom Purdon, who did live in Green Valley for many years, has relocated to Phoenix, but he is still on our board. You saw was courtesy of Frances Causey, a really great film producer who lives in Tubac now. She did that a few years ago, and as you can see, it's a little out of date, and I will bring you up to date on what's changed. But the graphics are wonderful, and they do show really why this issue is so important. I expect many of you know about the proposed Rosemont mine, and I don't want to bore you all to tears with the details. So I'm going to be pretty brief, and later if there are questions, I'll certainly be happy to answer them. I see my friend Shafer, of course, is on, and she will be speaking about big issues also in the Patagonia mountains. We work together as much as we possibly can on these issues. And we're both hopeful that they will be resolved positively. The Santa Rita issue has been going on, well, depending on how you want to count it, it's more than 20 years. The current company is called Hud Bay, short for Hudson Bay. They're in Canada. Most mining companies now, or many around the world, are Canadian. The previous company was called, you may remember that name. Hudbay is kind of a medium-sized company. They don't have a very good record around the world. They're actually in the courts, the human rights courts in Canada right now for human rights, serious human rights violations in Guatemala, where we'll see what comes of that. The mine here, what is being proposed is an open pit copper mine on the north eastern slope of the mountains, with a pit about a mile wide and a half a mile deep, I think it is, or mile and a half wide and a mile deep. Kind of got the numbers right now. It would be partly, the pit would mostly be on private land, Hudbay's land, and that's what's allowing them to move ahead. There are some private lands in the Santa Ritas in holdings that have been there for many, many years, because there was some simple mining even in the 1800s before the National Forest was created. So the mining claims are part of the mountains. They're on both sides, but they're largely down the west side above you who live in Green Valley and Sahuarita. They come down through the little community of Helvetia. But this mine would be on the eastern slope of the mountain. The biggest, there's many reasons why we're concerned about it, but probably the number one reason, and certainly of considerable concern to those of you who may live in Green Valley or Sahuarita, is the impacts on water. The mining company would be able to pump unlimited amounts of water, unlimited amounts of water. The state law in Arizona does not impact mining companies. Mining companies have to get a permit, but it's a must issue permit. And there are no limitations on the amount of water that they can pump. They have a couple of big drill water pumps already in along Sahuarita Road, and there would be more of that deep. They are very deep. So one of the immediate impacts is the people who live nearby who are on wells themselves, shallow, how they would be impacted. More importantly is what it would do to the entire water table in the Santa Cruz River drainage. The Santa Cruz, as most of you know, flows north, starts in the Huachucas, it flows into Mexico, comes north through Nogales, comes through the Green Valley area, up through Tucson. Many, many years ago, flow into the Gila River. It doesn't ever make it there anymore. But it is the principal water source, of course, for the city of Tucson as well. Now, if we look at the eastern side of the Santa Ritas, what would be the impacts there on water? The Cienega Creek drainage, I hope you all have been to Cienega Creek, know where it is. Now we have a wonderful Bureau of Land Management National Conservation Area there, and Pima County protected much of Cienega Creek. But the mine would lower the amount of water in Cienega Creek and in Davidson. And that was the picture that you saw on the little video, was Davidson Canyon. Tucson gets about 20% of its drinking water from that Cienega Basin. That amount of water would be depleted, and what's at least as bad is there would be almost certainly heavy metals in the water, be serious contamination. So that's the water issue. There's air pollution issues. Saguaro National Park East has expressed concern. Some days of the year, a month or a couple of months of the year, it's very likely that that part of Pima County would be in violation of national standards. There's a considerable wildlife impacts. A number of years ago, the Game and Fish Department said that this would render the Ritas worthless as wildlife habitat. We're concerned about the economies of the little communities, Patagonia, Sonora. They are heavily invested in tourism, bird watching, B&Bs, all kinds of things, wineries, of course. And it's very likely that people would not drive as much down Highway 83 to reach those communities. Why? Well, that's a 2-lane road. It would have mining trucks on it about every 15 minutes, 24 hours a day. Also, the road isn't equipped for that kind of traffic. And if there's any renovations done on that road, that would be at taxpayers' expense, not the mining company. There's a whole concerns, archaeology, prehistory, cultural resources, if you want to call it that. There is a the Tohono O'odham, the ancestors of the Tohono O'odham who live here today, the Hohokam, as they are called, had a village in the location of where this mine would be. That would be, to be fair, there would be archaeological excavations done and a report would be written, but the village, what's on the ground, would be gone. Thus, the Tohono O'odham and 2 other tribes, the Pasquayaqui tribe and the Hopi tribe, have joined us in our various lawsuits. Other organizations that have joined us are the Sierra Club, the Grand Canyon chapter out of Arizona, a group called the Arizona Mining Reform Coalition, and the Center for Biological Diversity. So there's a lot of us in this together. Now, where are we right now? As I said, that little video is a bit out of date. Their permit, but the good news was that in July of 2019, the federal judge here in Tucson, Judge James Soto, wrote an opinion that the mine could not go ahead, that it was the permit that the Forest Service had issued was in violation of the National Mining Act. Well, needless to say, Hudbay immediately took that to court. And so they filed briefs, we filed briefs, et cetera, it goes back and forth. And in February of this year, of 2021, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals will be hearing our case. Now, it is our hope, of course, that they will agree with Judge Soto. We don't know. There are 30-some judges in every appeals court. Mine are judges in this case from California, Washington, Oregon, I think Nevada, and Arizona. We don't know which judges will be chosen to hear the case or how they will be picked. It's rotation. And that's going to be a big deal. But we're hopeful, and to get into politics, which I try to avoid generally, but in this case, we're very hopeful that the new administration will look more carefully at some of these issues. So I think that's all I have to say for right now, and I'm sure happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Well, people can write questions on the chat, but I have a question. If there is a favorable ruling in February, is that the end of the story for the Rosemont mine, or do they have other options for challenging?
That's an excellent question. The answer is that's probably the end. Mining law is a little uncertain in some ways. We have, by the way, just in case some of you don't know, we in this country, we're still operating under what's called the 1872 mining law. It became law during the term of President Grant, right after the Civil War, and we've had it ever since without much change. It needs to be changed, obviously. At the moment, it doesn't consider environmental concerns, it doesn't consider local concerns, it's a whole lot of things that it doesn't do, and it definitely makes it easy for mines to go ahead. But in this case, if their permit is rescinded, it would be very difficult, let us say, for them to go ahead. What would happen, or what we would like to see happen, what we've certainly been working toward for a long time, would be a land exchange, a buyout. Fortunately, the Federal Land and Water Conservation Fund was reinstituted recently. You know, that's a lot of money that comes from oil and gas around the country, goes into conservation purposes. What we'd like to see happen would be simply a buyout of their property, about 900 acres. And the rest of what they're trying to do is actually on Coronado National Forest land. I didn't really go into that, but that's the reason that we have a voice, because this is impacting forest land. But if we can buy out their claims, we would want to see that 900 acres either stay in the forest, but in a no mining situation, or perhaps be taken over by Pima County as space. So that's our long-term goal.
Oh, okay. There's one question from our participants. How many jobs does the mine say they will create? To make a compelling economic argument against it, we need to know the numbers. So.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm sorry, I didn't mention that before. The number kind of varies from day to day, but it's between probably 400 to 425, something like that. And we have had some really good economic analysis done regarding what they would do. It's a tiny percentage of jobs in Pima County and Santa Cruz. It's like less than 0.1% of the whole economic base in the county, or in the two counties. So it really doesn't mean much. It also, as we understand modern mining, many of these folks would come from other places. They would be, well-educated engineers and so forth that would not probably be in the local workforce. But yes, there would be jobs, and of course there would be some spin-off under where those people live and where they spend their money and so forth. From everything we've been able to determine and the economists that we've spoken to, the negative impacts far outweigh any positive impacts from those jobs. Also, the mine is only, and this is what HUD-Base says, the mine is only expected to last between 20 and 25 years. The copper is deep now, and they have to have a huge burden. They have to get off before they can get to the copper. It's low quality, as virtually all copper is today, because all the easy copper has already been mined. And there's not all that much of it. So 20 years, they're gone. They leave us with a huge hole in the ground, serious impacts to our water, and a lot of the other things that I have said.
Okay, maybe we can take a couple short ones, and then the other questions we could discuss when we go on the small group. So I'll take these two. What is the U.S. Forest Service position on the current proposal?
Oh, they granted the permit. That's who we are in court against right now.
Okay, so the Forest Service was in favor of the mine going forward. Okay, and
yeah, the Forest Service does. Let me just comment on that a bit. The Forest Service is in a very difficult position because they are dealing with antiquated law, and because their lawyers in Washington tell them, not to be sticking their necks out. We know from the personal experience that most of the people on the local staff, Forest Service staff, do not favor this mine, but we're not in a position, or at least they chose not to be in a position to take any action opposing it.
Okay. I said I would take one more question. Connie Williams, do you think that's about right with our timing, and take the others? Okay,
yeah,
I'm going to take one more. We'll do the others in the group and at the end, okay? And we can send them out to people. All right, because we told people we're going to talk about this, what is happening on the west side of the Santa Ritas now? We heard there was exploration for mining. Why are they mining there now?
Oh, yes. Yes, thank you for bringing that up. I forgot to mention that because it's a sort of a separate issue. A couple months ago, HUD Bay, we first heard about this from an article in the Green Valley News, actually. They announced that they were going to do some exploratory drilling on their private land, on their claims, which they can legally do. The areas that they chose to do that on are, on the west side of the mountains, up mostly quite high near the ridge line, but not all. So if you know where Helvetia is, it's kind of above that, or Lopez Pass up on top of the mountain, it's in that vicinity. We were able to get there's a wonderful nonprofit organization called Lighthawk that will fly for you and take photographs for conservation issues. Because of COVID, we were not able to go up with them, but the pilot, who did a terrific job, simply flew for us a couple of weeks ago and took a bunch of pictures. We're just in the process of out so everybody can see them. For those of you that are on our listserv. We sent it out about a week or so ago, one of the photos. So what they're doing, well, I mean, it's not wonderful. It's not in the big picture, it could be a lot worse. They're digging some holes with drilling. So they've made some more roads. They've got some trucks parked up there. And they're trying to see, apparently, if there's more ore, worthwhile ore, west side. Now, they can't do anything about that. And that is not in the current permit proposal. So if they wanted to try to mine that, they'd have to start all over and start a new proposal, which we think is actually pretty unlikely.
Okay. Well, there are several really good questions, but we're going to hold them for now and get on so we get a chance to hear Carolyn also. And we'll all be coming back together at the end, so to share some of this information. All right. Thanks a lot, Gayle. And you're going to stay with us to the end. So. Okay.
Yes, I will.
Okay. Okay. And I might just mention, because we're all kind of new to Zoom, on the upper right-hand corner, if you hover your mouse over it, it says view. There's so many people. We've got 41 people at this meeting right now. If you click that little icon that says view and go to speaker view, you'll get a big full-size screen of the speaker. It's a little easier. I'm finding it a little easier to follow. So, so not required, but just an option. Okay. And I am. So it is my great pleasure to introduce Carolyn Shafer. She is the mission coordinator for PARA, which is the Patagonia Area Resource Alliance. She's got a surprising background. She managed a law firm. She was co-owner of a power line construction company. She was owner of a directional drilling company. She's directed a charter school. She was founder and co-owner of a local art gallery. I mean, this is incredible business background for taking on big corporations and public agencies. But there's another side to her too. She is an initiated earth keeper in the Quero wisdom teachings of the high Andes. To be an earth keeper is to know that everything has a spirit and that all is sacred. I've watched her work over these last few years, and she is a no-nonsense strategist, capable of bringing together lots of different people and resources to hold agencies and corporations' feet to the fire. But it comes from a deep place of love and compassion for our Mother Earth. I'm proud to introduce my friend, Carolyn Shafer. Carolyn.
Thank you, my dear friend, Connie. Thank you. Okay, I will work to rise to the occasion of that beautiful introduction. Thank you, Connie, and thank you to both Connies for bringing this together, and gratitudes to Gayle with Save the Scenic Santa Ritas. She and I do spend a good amount of time on the phone together in this work. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen. And hopefully you all have the first slide of inspiring stewardship. There is a very strong link between Save the Scenic Santa Ritas and Patagonia Area Resource Alliance. Save the Scenic Santa Ritas has been doing this work for, I believe Gayle said, about 20 years now. And one of the things we have in common is that the mastermind behind what we now call the Rosemont Project is the same individual who masterminded filing claims here in the Patagonia Mountains. Under the 1872 mining law, what has developed over the course of time is that there are junior mining companies, typically Canadian mining companies, who will develop a project but never actually move into mine production itself. Their goal is to sell it off to a senior mining company who will proceed with that mining. And that is what happened for the Hud Bay project in the Santa Rita Mountains, and Currently here in the Patagonia Mountains, until midsummer a year ago, we also had Junior Canadian Mining Company in here developing the project, the same person who originally developed the Hud Bay project, and have now sold that off to South 32 and Australian Mining Company. Under the 1872 mining law, if you had claims and you worked them for a while and you kind of liked that a whole lot, you could go to the federal government and say, I want to own this land. And under the 1872 mining law, the federal government would sell you that land for about $5 an acre. That clause of the 1872 mining law is still on the books, but it is on hold at the moment. They could reactivate it, but it is on hold at the moment. So the Rosemont project has been able to do what they have done because they've operated on the private patented land, which escapes many environmental regulations. The challenge for the Hud Bay project was they wanted to then dump all their stuff, the tailings, onto public lands. And that is what that, you know, for me, that's what I say is the recap of that lawsuit is, no, you can't just dump all your stuff onto the public lands. It's the same situation for us here in the Patagonia Mountains, in that there is about 450 acres of private patented land that they are currently operating off of, and you'll see some pictures of that shortly of how tight that is for them. But they are also faced on moving out onto public lands, and that is where we are able to make objections. The map that you are looking at is the Santa Cruz watershed outlined in red. This is why both of these projects matter to all of us in Santa Cruz County, in Pima County, and beyond. This watershed serves more than 1 million people and an untold number of wildlife. Here in the Patagonia Mountains, there are documented over 100 federally threatened, endangered, and sensitive species. We are a unique, biologically diverse ecosystem. So you can see, I hope, where the Patagonia Mountains are, and that green area that represents the location of the proposed mine by South 32, and also where the Rosemont Copper Project is, just over the border there in Pima County, but is obviously also going to, both of these together are going to have a huge impact on the water in this county, pardon me, in this watershed. Gayle mentioned the volume that Rosemont proposed to withdraw. Right now, we are not sure what mine production South 32 has planned. We only have the information from the prior owner of this project, and that project was talking about almost 1 million gallons of water per day. But they are talking about, well, don't use those old numbers because we haven't released our plan yet. The plan that they have released is to move forward with their exploration. They need to do massive dewatering because the materials are down so deep in the earth right now. And every time they start drilling, it fills up with water. So they want to draw down they don't want to draw down. We don't know how much they want to draw down. We know they want to draw down and dump 1.6 billion, with a B, 1.6 billion gallons of water a year for 4 years in order to be able to reach the minerals of interest to them. There's every slide here I could devote an hour to, and we are short for time, so I will not go into all of this in detail. You can read these slides as I speak. I will share a PDF of the slides for anyone who wants to see them with Connie so she can share them. And this is being recorded for further looks. So 21st century industrialized mining exploits the 1872 mining law, which, as Gayle said, is horribly outdated. This thing is almost 150 years old. We've made a few changes in the 150 years, including our reality today of where we are with our climate crisis. 21st century industrialized mining exploits the 1872 mining law. They get to take out all these minerals for free with no royalties. The history of mining is that we, the taxpayers, are left with the environmental damages. And I want to share a contrast that I think brings home the difference of mining then and proposed mining now. The Patagonia Mountains do have a 100-year history of mining from about 1860 to the early 1960s. During that entire 100 years of mining production, a total of 250,000 tons of ore was removed from the mine. 100 years, 250,000 tons. The former owner of the Hermosa project proposal was to remove that 100-year total every 25 days.
Wow.
This isn't your grandfather's mining anymore. This is dramatically different. And as I said, there's a lot I could say on every slide, and believe me, the 1872 mining law I could devote a day to, so, but we won't. This is a map of the Patagonia Mountains and the claims in these mountains. And I will do my best to explain them because I thought I might be able to use my little thing to show you, but I won't. The gray areas that you see are claims by still a junior Canadian mining company by the name of Barksdale. And they have filed all those claims on forest public lands, and we have resisted several of their requests to move forward with exploratory drilling, but they have not successfully been able to do that. There is an open request for them to do drilling on the San Antonio project, which you see on the lower right there. And we're waiting for the Forest Service's decision on that. The large area in the middle that you see, I want to point out the yellow and then the green. The green is Forest Service public land. All of that is claimed by South 32 now. They own those claims. The yellow portion is patented land. So that's private land that used to be public land. And because it's private land, they are allowed to operate with very little environmental regulations. They do have to get some permits to do this drawdown that I mentioned and dropping water in. But unfortunately, as Gayle said, it's essentially as long as you cross your T's and dot your I's, your wish is granted. We are in the process right now of challenging the permit applications that South 32 has filed. And that is based on them not providing sufficient information to the state about the huge ramifications of this level of water drawdown in a very fragile environment during a time of mega drought. So we'll see that those yellow sections, I'll point those out again, but those are South 32's private patented lands. The green area again is all of their unpatented land claims that they have filed. Those claims between those two companies total about 39,000 acres immediately outside the town of Patagonia. In addition, Rio Tinto has been filing claims throughout the Santa Ritas and the Patagonias, but we have heard no intentions from them of what they want to do yet. The Hudbay project would impact this watershed for multiple reasons. And as Gayle said, there were going to be huge impacts to the Cienega. And in order to mitigate, which has become one of my least favorite things about all of this mining activity, is mitigation essentially means, okay, I'm going to destroy your firstborn child, but it's okay because I'll go make another one for you. And that doesn't work for me. But that's the reality that we deal with. Hudbay, in destroying Cienega Creek, filed a plan with the Forest Service to do nice things, they thought, within the Sonoyta Creek watershed. But two of our major organizations filed remarks on that and saying, you know, this isn't a good plan and no, it isn't going to help us. But we're hoping that the lawsuit that Save the Scenic Santa Rita has filed will be successful, and that will shut down the Hudbay project and will be a huge precedent for this project, because again, you can see they are operating right now on private patented land, and they want to move out onto the unpatented land, and we don't want them to do that. So you saw the map. Here's a picture of what it looks like on the ground. This is that one of those yellow areas. This is about 300 acres and private patented land. It was formerly owned and operated by the Asarco company. And as is typical with the former mining companies, they walked away and left significant on the ground environmental damage, which is one of the reasons Alum Gulch has such contaminated waters. It was a good thing that they came in and they remediated this work. The South 32 owns this private patented land now because the mine company went to the state and said, oh, gee whiz, you and the taxpayers have been left with this environmental nightmare. Why don't you sell it to us and we'll fix it? So the deal, the original deal with the state was the mining company was going to own the former Asarco property. They proposed to put in a passive water treatment plant that would have cost them approximately $3 million. Para hired an expert, filed paperwork with the state, and lo and behold, it became a requirement for an active water treatment plant that ended up costing the company $25 million. Every time we move them from passive to active, it's better for the environment. Every time we move them from 3 million to 25 million, they bear the cost of fixing things rather than the taxpayers. We believe that the people and the planet matter more than profit for corporations, and that the first tenet of responsible mining should be a recognition that there are some places that should not be mined, knowing the threats to the planetary ecosystem. The Patagonia Mountains are part of the Madrean Pine Oak Woodlands, a global biodiversity hotspot, as are the Santa Ritas. All of the Sky Island corridors are very important to protect. There are 6 different biological provinces that overlap in this region. The Patagonia Mountains are a range and gateway for the jaguars and ocelots, and as I said, over 100 federally threatened endangered species within our area. We are the pollinator capital of the United States with over 600 species of bees, 300 types of butterflies and moths, 14 hummingbird species, and 2 nectar-feeding bats. We have more unique creatures per quarter quad under the USGS system than many other places, or if not all other places in the United States. We are so special that scientists recognize that this region is one of the top 5 regions in the world most in need of protection for species survival. And species survivals includes the human beings. On the upper left, you see that yellow patented land again. On the right, you see a Google Earth picture of the mine company's work. This is how they so want to avoid environmental regulations. They have very, very carefully stayed within their boundaries. But now that South 32 is planning to move into mine production, they have to fill their infrastructure needs, water, roads, and electric power. And those are the things that PARA will be working on for 2021 to hold the mining companies and the state agencies to the highest level of regulations with respect to water and roads and electric power. Economic benefits was mentioned earlier in one of the questions, and while we don't have specific numbers yet, because again, South 32 has not released what is their mine production plan, but we can tell you about 2 years ago, the former owner had contracted with ASU to do an economic study. It was nothing but a one-sided fairy tale. None of the downsides of doing mining were included, and there was no evaluation of what might happen to a very healthy and thriving nature-based economy that is here in the Patagonia Mountains. And we do have ongoing exploratory drilling by the senior South 32, but it is on their private patented land. There's not much we can do. But we do have another junior Canadian mining company in here, Barksdale Resources, who owned those 3 big gray areas. And they would like to do exploratory drilling. And every time that comes up, that's where we get to comment to the agency and or the Forest Service. Where was one proposal several years ago to exploratory drill the Sunnyside project, where there are Mexican spotted owls who are endangered species. And the Forest Service said that the exploratory drilling could not happen for about 4 months out of the year. And this was not economically attractive to them, so they didn't proceed. That's the good news. PARA primarily wants to empower all of our community activists to step up and speak out to protect our water and our wildlife. And it is going to take all of us. And we have the opportunity to do that. I am personally very encouraged by the change in the federal government. I don't expect a lot of difference immediately, but certainly we'll staunch the bleeding and the wholesale throwing out of environmental regulations that has been occurring under the Trump administration. But because of the situation unfolding with Congress, it is unlikely we will be able to make significant positive changes in laws, et cetera, but we're better off than we were under the current administration, I certainly hope. Does resistance work? Yes, resistance does work. PAR has been at this since 2011, and this is a good place to pause and say, thank you, Save the Scenic Santa Ritas. Originally, the Patagonia Mountains were also a part of their mission and still is, but because of the huge threat in the Patagonia Mountains, Patagonia Area Resource Alliance formed in 2011 to be the lead organization on this resistance. We have successfully shared information about the threats, and we have major victories, including originally the former owner of this project intended to do an open pit mine. And that plan, because of resistance, was abandoned. And now they're on their private patented land and talking about an underground mine. Under the 1872 mining law, the Forest Service really doesn't say a whole lot because they are responsible for surface disturbance. And if this is an underground mine from private patented land and they do lateral drilling underground, it's a whole different ballpark. But PARA is working to hold the Forest Service to its higher duty to protect the water in the public lands above mining. But that is going to take a lot of convincing. But again, with a shift to a new administration, we are hoping that the Forest Service's directive from the federal government will change. PARA doesn't work alone. We are a small organization, actually. We are a bunch of dedicated, crazy citizens who are interested in protecting the water and wildlife. We're the on-the-ground watchdogs. We're paying attention to what is happening, and then we raise our hands and speak up. We have national partnerships with Defenders of Wildlife and Earthworks. We have regional partnerships with Save the Scenic Santa Ritas, Sky Island Alliance. We're working with Sky Island Alliance with remote cameras to document the wildlife that comes through this corridor, because the border wall is another threat to our region. Sierra Club Grand Canyon chapter is taking the lead on a significant change that is happening for all of us right now, which is with respect to the Clean Water Act. The federal government wanted to not be responsible for that anymore, and the state of Arizona decided that they will take over the Clean Water Act. So the federal law no longer applies. However, the state law has not yet been drafted. And the Sierra Club is taking the lead on working with the agencies and keeping all of us informed in that. That is something we do all need to pay very close attention to. Locally, we also work with many organizations such as Borderlands Restoration Network, Tucson Audubon, the Nature Conservancy, Friends of Sonoyta Creek, Deep Dirt Farm, Circle Z, and others. PARA is also a member of two very important networks, Western Mining Action Network and Arizona Mining Reform Coalition, both of whom help us on hard rock mining issues throughout the state and throughout the West. PARA board has a great board of hardworking individuals, and a lot of people don't want to be board members, but they want to help us. So we have a team structure with people working on roads issue or the power issue or et cetera. This is a model that is working very well for us. What can you do? Please stay informed. Visit our website and sign up for the newsletter and social media information. Any action steps that we ask going forward, we put out in our newsletter, and that's the major reason for asking you to please be involved. Support environmental organizations that are working to change the federal and state laws, and volunteer with your local community organizations, and let our voices be heard. Letters to the editor, communicating with legislators, responding to call for comments, and voting. All of these things are critical action steps that each individual can do. And our organization, PARA, as well as Save the Scenic Santa Ritas, we both have great newsletters. We will reach out to you and let you know this is critical at this point in time. Please do this, that, or the other thing. It's a key action step by everyone. And thank you for being here and listening, and hopefully you will join us. I want to close this presentation by saying to this group, who I don't think there's anybody who will disagree with me, the mega drought is real. Species extinction is real. Neither of these facts are debatable. And we can't forecast how this story ends, but we can guarantee it will be a better story if we all work for the best solution for the ecosystem. Thank you.
Okay, let's see, Carolyn, can you close out your screen maybe?
I am trying to. Welcome to Zoom. I'm trying.
Thank you very much. That was really interesting.
And if you have questions, put them in the chat is probably the best way to do it. I noticed something from Robert Gay, who knows Carolyn better than we do. uh, he says, do what you can do. Get out there into the nature we're trying to preserve, however you love to experience it. I think that is just awesome. And Francis Glad has put in the chat the Patagonia Alliance, the PARA website. Any questions? That was, you know, I'm thinking that what everybody is just eager to get into these groups and ask some questions. Connie.
Connie, could I ask a question or two?
Yeah,
This is Gayle.
Gail, yeah.
Can you hear me? Carolyn did a terrific job, as she always does. And I was just going to add a couple more specifics regarding Save the Scenic Santa Ritas. It's very similar to what Carolyn said. We have a listserv, and if you want to send us your email address, we will put you on our listserv. We won't inundate you, but you will get our updates regularly, and you will know definitely what. We encourage you also take a look at our website, scenicSantaRitas.org. A lot of good stuff on there that will answer some of the questions that I've already seen going around. Also, I would say, find out, if you don't know, who your state legislators are, who your Pima County, Santa Cruz County supervisors are. We have some very good people in those positions in some cases, and in a few cases, not such good people. Find a vote, pay attention. And at the federal level, we are extremely fortunate to have Representative Raul Grijalva representing both both Santa Cruz County and a good part of Pima County. His office has been remarkable in their ability to really look at these issues, take the time to really help us out in a lot of ways. What he has tried to do, it's not been successful so far, but he has tried to, he has introduced a bill into several sessions of Congress that would actually call the Santa Ritas and the Patagonias as special places, basically what Carolyn said, that would be off limits to the kinds of activities we are very concerned about. I think there's some possibility that that could happen in the near future. I don't know how much money would have to change hands. Some would, these be bought out to some degree, but that's what we're going to need for these areas to remain protected, is some kind of long-term federal legislation. Okay, that's all for me.
Okay, we've got,
Thank you.
I want to stick a pin in that legislators. I think we've got one with us, but we'll come back to that in just a minute. Let me catch a couple of these questions. Nisa said, what role is the U.S., let's see, I think this is for Carolyn. What role is the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service taking in the protection of the wildlife in these areas?
No active role at this time is, I think, an accurate statement. Gail, how about your Save the Scenic? Are they taking an active role up there?
No, same thing. They were kind of co-opted during this most recent current administration and really not able to do very much. Same went for Environmental Protection Agency. I would say 10 years ago, 12 years ago, both of those organizations were quite helpful and did their best, the EPA especially, but they have been very hamstrung in the last 4 years.
Okay, and from David Stone, and I think this is also Carolyn, did I understand you to say that South 32 can extend underground mining under Forest Service land without the normal review process for above ground?
That sadly is correct.
Mm.
The way the laws are written, the Forest Service is responsible for any disturbance on the surface, but nothing underneath. And underneath is BLM, but you know, there isn't a direct statement to BLM that they would get involved. So Our lawyers do incredible contortions to connect the dots and to get them responsible. But yes, unfortunately, they can do lateral drilling underground and escape environmental regulations unless we raise our hands and speak out.
Okay,
Mm.
and I am not seeing